Everybody remembers their first wave, whether it be in the ocean, their first break in business, or their first big win. I'm David McClymont, a former competitive surfer now turned C-suite executive leading the Palm Beach Symphony into its 48th season, and your host on the Waves of Success podcast.
This show is brought to you by IYC Yachts, Chervaux, and Square Grouper. Produced by Indie House Films.
Hey everybody, I'm David McClymont, your host of Waves of Success. And today we have an incredible guest that I'm thrilled to have with us today. George Hines, who's the founder of George's Music, is also the chair of Tiger 21. And we're going to be talking a little bit about leadership and a little bit about entrepreneurialism. George, thank you for being on Waves of Success.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I must say that I am incredibly excited to be with you. You and I had the opportunity, I guess it was about 4 or 5 months ago,
right,
to have dinner at 1000 North.
That's right.
And it was almost like atoms colliding. You know, we went into a TED Talk right there on the spot.
That's right.
Talking about entrepreneurialism, talking about leadership. Share with our audience who you are, what you do, and how you got here. And I know that there's many chapters that we'll dive into,
Sure.
but just give an overview.
Sure. Well, that night, you know, that energy that you bring to the table, it gets spun up when you meet somebody like that, and that's what you did to me. So anyway, so my name is George Hines, and currently I'm the chair of the Tiger 21 Palm Beach group. So most people know what this is all about. It's mostly entrepreneurs built businesses. In many cases, they sold them, and now they're dealing with the kind of the redefinition of who they are and what are they going to do to be meaningful and purposeful in the last half of their life. So it's a pretty interesting group of people. We laugh a lot. We talk about incredible ideas. And it's one of those, kind of like when we got together, it's one of those energy givers. So I really enjoyed this part of my life. I've been a member first for 2 years. And I've been chairing, this will be going on my third year of chairing the group. So it's a global organization, 1,200 members globally. Very select group of people. It's hard to get in, and it's all by invitation. And just an amazing group of people. So that's my current job, main job, and I love it. Absolutely love it. Before that...
Prior to that, you had a part-time job.
I did.
Something to do with music.
So I'm the founder of George's Music. When I was in college, I was going to be a teacher. And I was going to be a history teacher. But to pay for college, I was a performer, played 4 nights a week. This was the passion, really loved it. Made a lot of money doing it, enough to pay for the college education. And when the teaching I didn't seem to really like it. I didn't like the system at that time. This was late 70s. I decided to follow my passion, which was music. And so I started a one-man operation in 1977. And I had a sign in one window that said students want it, since we had a teaching operation. And on the other side, it was teachers want it. And as time went on, I built up the inventory, and then we expanded, and it grew into a fairly large size amount of musical instrument business. And after that...
So you said performing. Let me interject for 1 second.
Sure.
You said performing. What was your instrument?
So primarily it was keyboards and guitar. So I would play whatever they needed in the group.
And you started in Pennsylvania?
I started in Pennsylvania, a little town right outside of Philadelphia in 1977, like 2 months after I graduated college. So...
And with the sole premise of teaching lessons to start with?
And doing consignment. I just let people bring instruments in they wanted to, sell, and I would then help them sell those instruments. And so it took a while to develop the amount of business, but it was fun, it was exciting. Did whatever I needed to do to make that move forward. So for a long time, I was, growing my business. In the between time, this is part of the story, I decided to start a real estate company. So as I was growing, I was buying the buildings. I eventually bought some shopping centers along the way that I put my stores in. And then I was going to franchise. And instead of franchising, I decided to start a independent music organization called the Alliance of Independent Music Merchants in 1998. So it's basically a consortium of about 200 storefronts across this nation. It'll be a 25th anniversary this year coming up. And we do about 10% of all the music industry retail business. And so it's invitation only, some great independent music retailers, and we go by the moniker AIM, AIMM.
Was that intended?
Yes.
Because I love that.
Yeah.
In terms of an acronym, that's a great acronym.
Yeah, and we really play off of that acronym.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been really
So it's
exciting.
fascinating. When I sit down and I speak with entrepreneurs, it's interesting to me that they have their hands in a lot of different things. And a
That's
lot
true.
of times that's part of the recipe for success. So you start in 1977, you get the store started, then you begin concurrently, I guess, with this real estate business.
Right.
And then the association. Where were some of the catalysts, if you reflect back, that were the game changers for you to take things to the next level?
So the catalyst always seemed to come from avid reading. I'm a big reader, so if I had something I was trying to solve, you know, you can go and talk to people, or you can just look at the experts that are out there that have written books. I would do both, but a lot of reading. I mean, I would take 1 week a year off, and I would take a cruise by myself with somewhere between 10 and 20 books. And that's what I did, day and night. I would read and break out and occasionally do some fun things, and I would come back with so many ideas. It kept me busy for another year. So a lot of that was really the catalyst.
Well, you and I spoke about that at dinner. We're both avid readers, and we love to read
Really important.
different business books. And I agree with that. I think I can reflect back and probably quote 20 different books right now that were influential to me in my journey in leadership.
That's right.
So it's fascinating that you were doing that. What was the ladder up? You start the music store, teaching lessons. What year was it where you went from sort of teaching lessons to really starting to see traction
Yeah,
in terms of selling instruments and establishing yourself?
It took 8 years. So 1985, I opened a second location.
In Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania, pretty large, about 45 minutes away from the first. Bought the building. And I actually had a guy teach me how to negotiate, so I learned from him. And so there's a person that helped me along my journey. Still remember his name, still remember what he was all about.
Well, we were speaking about that, and we talk about this on the show all the time,
Yeah.
as people that have influenced us. I've had my mentors and the people that positively influenced me. Talk a little bit about him and how he influenced you at the time with the negotiation.
Yeah, so his background was a history teacher like me, and he decided also not to go down that path, and instead he got involved in apartment buildings. And then he bought some commercial buildings, and I met him. He was the owner of the first location that I had. And I used to make him come to get his rent in person so that I could hammer him with a list of questions that I put together between months.
Pick his brain?
Pick his brain.
Yep.
And he thought it was funny, so he played along, and I learned a lot. And so I used that knowledge, and then as I went to start doing the real estate thing, I'm a good listener, so I let him, give me some good advice. And you make mistakes, but you learn more from the mistakes than sometimes you do from the successes.
Speak to that, because that's another interesting thing that we discuss on this show when we sit down with entrepreneurs like you. Is I love to use the term failing forward, because I think that you have to be able to take risk. Obviously, you want to try to calculate the risk to minimize your exposure and liability, but you have to fail forward. So share with the audience a little bit of some of the lessons that you learned along the way.
So that whole concept became really clear when I read, I think it was in that Law of Success book that we talked about. There was a discussion with Thomas Edison about the light bulb. And so, and Thomas Edison's whole thinking was, I had never failed, I just kept figuring new ways of not lighting the bulb. So he tried over 10,000 times before he was successful. Never forgot that. So the idea is, like you said, never go so far that you're going to risk it all, but be willing to go out on the ledge, make the mistake, because the mistakes are really the learning tools for figuring out how to really do something. It's much better. And today, it's a lost art, but you need to celebrate, falling down. It's a gift.
That's why I use the term failing forward, because
it.
you're going to trip forward. It's okay to trip. And if you study a lot of the greatest entrepreneurs, a lot of them will talk about the fact that that was how they got to that level, is just through experimentation.
That's right.
Navigating through the labyrinth and realizing that you just had to continue to persevere through the path, that eventually a door was going to open up.
That's exactly
And
it.
learning along the way.
Really important.
Yep.
But the other thing is, all of us we bring to the table certain strengths God gave us and certain weaknesses. Awareness and knowing your blind spot is really important. So, I always had confidence that I would build a relationship within the company with people that I knew would be open and point out you might be missing something. And so the way to do that is you got to keep humility in everything you're doing. You got to be willing to be vulnerable and let someone have that authority to kind of help you before you make a fatal error or a major mistake that can be negative impact on your growth.
You and I spoke about that at dinner. One of the key ingredients to success in running a business is starting with who, then what, right? Getting all the right people on the bus and then
That's right.
getting them seated in the right position, to your point. And if you study Steve Jobs' autobiography, he talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
About making sure that you look at what I like to call areas of opportunity. Some people call them weaknesses. I'm sort of the optimist. But to your point, yeah, we're not going to be able to have all the traits and all the skill sets that we need as CEOs and business owners to go out and do it. So we have to surround ourselves with people that will complement us. But then to your point also, which I love, you have to be humble enough to be able to listen when someone's saying to you, hey, there might be danger around the corner.
Yeah, and if you make an agreement with someone and give them that authority to do that, then you gave the authority. So you need to bite the tongue and listen to the advice and the observation. That awareness is key. And most entrepreneurs and individuals that are trying something important, they get a little bit tunnel vision, and they don't necessarily see some of the things going on around them because they're so focused on getting the end game result. And so having that kind of out, if you will, where someone can give you an outside view, keep you moving in the right direction, stop bad things from happening. And by the way, I didn't learn that until I did the first big mistake with a person in the company, and I regretted it my whole life. And when I had the chance to talk to that person and apologize, I did, because I wasn't aware of what I was doing. So, you learn from that stuff, and it becomes the most important foundation blocks that you're laying is those ideas.
What would you share with our audience in terms of lessons learned from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
So maybe the first thing is listen. Entrepreneurs, we're committed to our thoughts. We believe them. Sometimes, just like Elon Musk, you shouldn't be able to do what he did, but you believe them, and so you make them happen. But the other thing is you tend to sometimes not be listening to things that are going on around you. So that's probably one of the most important things. Is it's great if you can sell your ideas and bring people along to see the vision, but are you able to take a step back and be able to listen to an ulterior, some kind of other way of looking at something, to consider that information so that you don't make a serious error and lose time in achieving your goals. So that's probably one of the number one things is being able to be aware through listening. And the ability to listen is another one of those tough skills for, I think, most people, but certainly for entrepreneurs.
Early on in my career, I took a sales training course with Tom Hopkins, who
Very
at the
good
time
guy.
was,
Yeah.
you know who that is,
Yeah, I do.
right? The art of master of selling anything. And I vividly remember in that sales training, he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in direct proportion. And
True.
I never forgot him saying it, and in the intonation that he said it, because it's so true in all of our travels throughout business, how important it is to listen.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, we were talking about failure forward, is that when you have that occur, you need to be, first of all, you need to be thankful. Most people can't be, but you need to be thankful, because otherwise you keep learning the same lesson. And the other thing is, you need to then document what is to learn. What was the gift of falling? Because there's something there for you. And if you finally figure that out, when the failure occurs, when you stumble, you actually get excited. You don't actually get disappointed. But it takes a long time to get your head to the place that is seemingly a good thing.
That's a paradigm shift.
Totally.
I like to call it the dead autopsy.
Yeah.
So anytime that I have a learning opportunity, I love to go back and almost like an autopsy, I'll autopsy it.
Yeah.
And say, what did I learn along the way? Why did this particular initiative die?
Right.
What is there to learn from it?
Yeah.
So we can hopefully prevent it again from
Exactly.
happening in the future.
And help others, because once we have learned something, that's part of our responsibility.
Yeah.
So another thing is, you get into a silo and you get into this whole way of thinking about things and doing things. It's habitual, and so it's just easy for those things to occur. So I go out of my way to change everything, pretty regularly. So like one of the things we do as a company is we'll do something called a circle meeting, typically with leadership. These are short meetings where we're talking about specific things. Our circle meetings, you can imagine most people would always go in the same place. You're not allowed to go in the same place. So we'll actually mix it up.
Breaking the habits.
Break the habits,
Yep.
and you're breaking the silo. You're breaking that whole, used to doing it this way, and you're always looking for what's the better way. And then another thing is that once you figure something out, you don't have to just do that. So my concept that I learned over time was where's the leapfrog? All right, great. We came up with this new idea, but I don't want to implement. What's my next step so I can save that next waiting period? And so I take everything that we figured out that's going to be better, and I'm pushing the envelope. What's that next level? So time is of the essence, and if you are looking at things always from, progression is a normal state, so you're moving forward, but can you leapfrog? Can you take it and jump it? If you can take it and jump it, you can really inspire a lot of people because they see what's going on, and then they're part of the whole process of helping you get that jumping to the next level.
What was the leapfrog for you? You went from one store to 2 stores. There was 8 years that transpired before the second store?
Yep.
Okay.
Then
then what was the next leapfrog?
The next 2 years later, I opened the third one, and then I bought a shopping center when I did that one. And then I think within the next couple of years, I opened a couple more. And then the big move was when I ended up going outside of Pennsylvania to Florida. So
Was that your next move outside of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it was.
Was Florida?
Yeah, it was.
And it was Orlando?
It was.
Yeah.
And the whole thought was
And was that in downtown at Disney?
No, that was actually.
It was prior to that?
It was. So the idea was, will this work 1,000 miles away? And so one of the things I was working on.
And that's a leap of faith.
It truly is, right?
Because you have logistics, right?
Right.
There's a lot that goes into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you got to get your systems down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big systems and process guy. Everything has to have a yin and a yang. So no matter what you're doing, there has to be a checks and balances. And so no matter, in the company, no matter what the positions are, there's always a checks and balances. So we make sure that we can't go off rail. There's always someone else that's looking at that. And in many cases, there's going to be a quarterly review or an annual review from more than a few people just to make sure we're not going in any particular area off the rails.
One of the things that I find very fascinating about you as being a very successful entrepreneur is you came from very humble beginnings. Right? We took a tour of this beautiful home that we're in right now, and you showed me some old pictures of your home in Pennsylvania. I think it's interesting. I always talk about Ace Greenberg, who was in charge of Bear Stearns, and he used to say that he had a PSD degree. Poor, smart, and a deep burning desire to succeed. So I hear you talking about all these different things in terms of processes and culture and implementation. You didn't go to Cornell for that, right?
No.
Was a lot of that from the books that you were reading and investing in yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Today, the world is at our fingertips. So for the youth, they need to really leverage that. Internet has allowed everyone to have the access to the world's information. So I think it was in the book that Bill Gates had put out recently, was talking about the changes that are going on with really people in the world. It's moving up because the technology has allowed people.
Accessibility.
Yeah, it's allowed all of us to really move forward. And so many times people are looking at the lack. We really need to accept the gain. There's a lot of great gain going on. So
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Right now, we could go onto our device and probably look up almost anything.
Well, I must have over 50 channels on YouTube. 20-30% of them are motivational channels. I get inspired. If I want to get inspired, if I want to know what's going on in technology, I got a couple of people that they're my faves. I'm going to go to them. So there's one called Cold Fusion TV. I just think it's just a brilliant brain candy, a channel, and he's always looking at new things that are happening. So those are the things that kind of keep me always looking forward. I don't get caught in a rut. Don't think that what is happening today is what's going to happen tomorrow. Where's the progression? And I try to find the positive, because the fear-mongering is a debilitating thing for people. Mm-hmm. And for entrepreneurs, it's a death. Because if you fall into anything that's like fear and that false evidence appearing real, right? Mm-hmm. Acronym.
We use that in surfing.
It's true,
all
right?
the time. Oh, it's absolutely
you lose
true.
the confidence,
right? It's all in your mind.
Yeah, and then you lose your momentum.
Yep.
So confidence, momentum, can't lose those if you're trying to do great things. You got to have the high confidence. Sometimes that will appear arrogant, but you need to be committed to the thought. Mm-hmm. And then you really got to make sure that you're always looking at how you're going to push that forward.
I've had many great mentors in my career, and I had one tell me about 10 years ago, David, use the windshield in direct proportion to the rearview mirror. And I never forgot it, because it's to that point of paradigm shift, right? If you're continuously looking 80% through that windshield onto the next opportunity, to the next goal, of course you're going to look back in the rearview mirror to learn, right? If you hit something in the middle of the road, you're going to look back and say, what did I hit? How do I learn from that? But look through the windshield.
Yeah.
To be forward thinking.
Yeah, they tell you if you're almost, on the track, if you're a racer, always look at where you want the
next corner.
to go.
Right.
don't
Not
ever,
straight in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make sure you're clear about where your destinations are. And that's the biggest challenge when you're communicating, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is getting people to actually understand destination thinking. So I don't do things without clearly understanding what the end game looks like. Then I work my way back. And that became really clear when I was listening to how Elon was talking about how he was, doing some of the technology breakthroughs. It's pretty much, you're looking at what's the result look like. If you can get a clear view of what that is, now it's just a matter of working it back, trying to figure out how do I get there. It's just like if you and I want to go somewhere, put in the GPS. It's a very specific place. Otherwise, we don't know what roads to take. So it's the same thing in life. What are you seeing? What's that destination look like?
One of my many favorite authors is Dr. Stephen Covey,
Yeah,
The 7
great.
Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the habits is to begin with the end in mind, right? To your point about that. And then I went to Purdue and got my Six Sigma, and during our dissertation, we studied Toyota. And I found it very fascinating that Toyota, at that time, didn't title their tire assembly people. They were titled lifesavers, because Toyota focused on attributes, and the attributes is exactly what you're talking about. It's that process of reverse engineering, going backwards as to what are the benefits of me putting this tire on. I'm saving a life. So once you start to understand the attribute of what you're doing within an organization, it becomes very important, and I know that you did that. Talk a little bit about culture, because you and I were talking, we could probably do a whole nother podcast on culture, but you and I are very huge believer.
Yeah.
So just Mike, you talk about listening to these different YouTube channels and having different channels that inspire you.
Right.
How do you inspire your team, and how do you create culture within George's music?
So for me, it's redefining what is my real main purpose when I'm working within the organization. This is actually true with Tiger 21. It's true with the Alliance of Independent Music Merchants or George's Music. It's about it's creating connection and bringing out the greatness in people. And so you can't do that unless you're really kind of getting to know what you have, and then you're seeing where's the gift, what's the strength they got, how do I help them bring that forward? And so that's kind of the direction.
I think you and I talked about Gallup with Strength Finders too, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's another great tool, to your point about identifying team members. Not every team member is going to be perfect. They're going to have their strengths and their areas of opportunity. But to your point, it's how do you really focus in and hone in on those strengths to bring them up to a new level?
It's really important. The other thing is that in any business, there's the transactional side and there's the important side. The important side is what is the impact that this business or this service that you're doing is really, really providing. So you got to have a good, clear vision statement. You also have to have a mission statement, which is a little different. And then you got to make sure that people can see that clearly. And then everything they're doing has meaning. So it doesn't make a difference what the position is. So we're changing lives one musician at a time. We're helping people, this music making is not just selling musical gear. It's a life-changing thing. So we're clear about what that is. To make sure that it's never forgotten weekly, we get all the documentation of some of the things that are on like the Google reviews, and we're reviewing some of the major things that have happened with our customers that have been life-changing with pictures. And we have over 4,000 Google reviews. It's over 4.9 for the company. It's not easy to do that. But you do that by building on the culture, it's about the customers. It's not about the products. And so how are they able to do what they're trying to do? And how well can we provide that solution for them? Mm-hmm. And it's a driver. I mean, you could come into the company and you now know you're a reason for being there. You're not just working there.
Well, it's purpose-driven.
Totally.
Right?
Right. And that's how you build the culture.
Well, I think purpose and passion is really important in terms of entrepreneurialism, but then also in our personal lives too.
That's right.
For us to feel like we're living a fulfilled life, we have to feel like we have purpose and passion.
That's true. And it does, you can learn so much on the business side that becomes part of how you run your life. And it's positive. If the culture is based on these kind of principles, it's a positive segue from business to personal. And we think that's an important part of our relationship with our employees. I think it's an important part of my Tiger group. These guys are amazing individuals, but it's really easy sometimes to, especially when you've lost your identity, to redefine that identity in such a way that it's every bit as powerful, if not more so, than when you were building this great business that you sold. And for me, it's like I know that I'm doing something extremely important and that's what drives me. And maybe the teacher part comes out there, but I mean, I learn from them too. It's not like, but
I'm sure it goes both ways.
It does, you know. But I'm trying to build that connection so that we're, you know, I have 2 little dogs. I say they're bonded because they are really bonded. I'm looking for bonded kind of relationships in the company. I'm looking for bonded relationships with Tiger 21. I'm trying to create something that goes beyond just an acquaintance, not normal. I want something that's like beyond
Synergistic.
normal. Yeah.
You and I talked about that. 1 + 1 = 5.
That's right.
Right? The math doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating when you find those relationships where you actually raise the bar for each other.
Yeah.
How many stores now?
Well,
With
I'm
George's?
selling off stuff, so I'm down now to 6.
Okay, and how many did you have at the height?
Probably twice that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many employees at the height?
At the height, a little over 100.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I talking about you had incredible tenure.
Yeah.
Didn't
and
you
still
have employees still to this
yeah,
day?
So most
people
of
that had been there for 10
long
years,
time.
15, 20 years.
I got a couple of people over 30 years. So.
And I bring that up because that speaks to culture.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the type of leadership you're providing to the rest of the team, and then it cascades down.
It's all documented. It's not just talk.
Yep.
So when someone comes in, the first thing we spend our time on is that. We use an inverted pyramid management style.
You and I talked about
Yeah.
that.
So,
Remember at dinner when I said that to
That's
you
right.
and your eyes lit up?
That's right.
Wait a second. He
Yeah.
knows
But
what
not
that
everybody-
inverted triangle is?
Not everybody knows. So that,
They,
you know,
they don't. And they don't
don't.
realize the power in it. I talk about it all the time, and I think I probably talk about it to ad nauseum, but there is a power in inverting it.
Huge.
Because if I, as CEO of Palm Beach Symphony, am trying to drive all the decision and I think I know it all, then I'm never listening to all the people down on the bottom that are really the smartest people. They're the ones that
They're the
have all
ones
the
we're
answers. They're
serving.
in their trenches.
That's
They're
right.
the ones that we're serving.
Yeah.
That then serve our customers and
That's right.
patrons and donors.
That's right.
Right.
It's a servant mentality with the inverted pyramid. And I read that first in the Nordstrom Way. It was a book. You may have read that book
I did
too.
read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, this is good.
One of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Do you remember the part where he talks about them taking the tires back?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And they
since I didn't
transitioned
even-
from the old tire store?
Yeah.
Someone came in with 4 tires.
I know, it's
And
pretty
they
amazing.
said, I heard you have 100% guaranteed take back. Yes, we do. All right, here are the 4 tires. No problem.
That's right. We just don't sell them, but hey,
Yeah,
bring
right.
them back in. But it was a great story. But those are the inspiring, stories that you sometimes read about, and they just impact you. But it's funny. You and I have met many people, and some of these people have said one thing they didn't even know what they were necessarily saying would be that impactful, but we heard it and it made a difference. And same with us. We're saying some things to people. We're not aware that, gee, that was important, but they are. And occasionally, I'm sure you, like me, you'll get people that'll get in touch with you and say, gee, you said this to me so-and-so long ago, and it's really been important. And I don't know about you, but those kind of things make
Oh,
you...
critical. I preach them all the time now.
Yeah.
So I worked at Bear Lakes Country Club for 15 years, as you know, and we had a member there that worked at AT&T. And he worked with Harold Janine, and he helped scale ITT, which then became AT&T. And he used to say to me every day, and I used to question why he would say it to me every day, David, your life and your success is going to be predicated off of 2 principles, critical few and trivial many. Your true success will be defined on your ability to distinguish the 2. He would say it on a loop. And here I am all these years later saying it.
It's pretty profound,
Because
actually.
it's pretty profound. And his point was,
Yeah.
if you're a paramedic and you show up to the scene of an accident on I-95 and there are bodies everywhere, who are you taking care of first? And it really does apply both in our personal and professional careers. So I love what you said about remembering those people that planted seeds on us. And I know you're planting many, many seeds. Who are the people that have inspired you? Whether it be family, whether it be people you worked with and motivated you,
So the
role models.
family side, it's interesting because we don't have a really super tight family. We're very different. My father was very funny, and so he really, and I was always serious. So when I was young and I was dating, my big concern was that my girlfriends were going to like him more because he was so darn funny. So I learned to lighten up over time because I realized that's an important part of life. It's just not all, rocket science. Sometimes it's, you got to take a step back and understanding what this is all about. It's connectivity. It's, being aware of what's going on around you and keep a little bit of balance. I think we talked about it once before. So I would say he was an influencer for sure.
He was the entrepreneur, you said?
He was entrepreneurial.
Or more entrepreneurial
Yeah, he was definitely
in
more
mindset?
entrepreneurial, yeah.
And your mom was more conservative?
Yeah, she was like, don't do it.
That's a good balance.
And my dad's like,
Launch the rocket.
Yeah. It was just music, and everyone in my family went to college. They were either, going into accounting or law or something like that. I'm going into music. So my grandmother was disappointed. My mother was disappointed. And meanwhile, it was the best thing that could have happened.
Were they all able to see how it turned out
Yeah, I think.
for the most part?
For the most part.
Yeah, that's great.
But I didn't really push it. If they saw it, they saw it, but I didn't really, I was doing what I enjoyed. I got up every morning. I just loved it. It was very successful. I'm very careful with money, so I was able to accumulate and not try to live beyond my means.
Talk a little bit about that, and I don't mean personally, but I mean from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because I think that's fascinating. There's also a juxtaposition between being entrepreneurial, i.e. Elon Musk, selling PayPal and taking all the money and putting it into whatever it was, Tesla, I think was his next.
It was a big
initiative,
of the dice.
Right? However, there also is something to be said about being a little conservative. Share with our audience a little bit about some of the business principles you've gained over time that you think are important to create that airplane of one wing is sort of entrepreneurialism, launch the rocket, the other is let's be a little bit Warren Buffett-like and be conservative.
Well, it goes back a little bit to what we originally talked about what's the risk reward. So you try not to put it in a position where you're going to lose it all. So I've always been kind of creative about trying to be committed to my thought, but not put myself in a position where it would throw me way back. Now that being said, I know entrepreneurs where and Elon might have been one of them. He really was rolling that dice. I like to roll the dice, but if it all goes wrong, I still can roll again. And so I've been really careful about always have a budgeting, always live beneath my means. I've never found money doesn't make you happier. You make you happier. And then the money can be positively used. And it doesn't make you unhappy unless you let it. But it doesn't necessarily make you happy. So it's a matter of trying to understand it's a tool and it's something to be properly used. So when I was even growing the business, I would leverage if I was buying a piece of real estate and so forth, but I was never leveraging to the point when any of the financial events occurred. I always had just tons of money ready. I always thought there's going to be something that's going to happen, and it happened in 2001, happened at the end of the 90s, happened in 2008, and happened in COVID. And when COVID hit, I got together with my wife and some of the leadership at the company. I just said, look, I'm going to start looking at how long we're going to be able to keep this going, but I don't want to lay anyone off. I don't want anyone to take pay cuts. I know we're not operating because we're not allowed to, but keeping the team intact. So we started doing Zoom meetings within days of that happening, and we just took care of whatever the averages were, just kept them all employed. We worked with them over the next couple of weeks to start being clear what was going on, and we were able to almost maintain everybody. We had a couple people that had family out of state that decided to go back to their families, but other than that, they all hung out with us, and we just banged through it. In 2008, same thing. In 2001, no one was traveling to Orlando. It was a ghost town because we were doing a lot of business with the international and tourism. There's nobody there. So we just got together, went out and had a party down at Disney. You bring when adversity occurs, two things can happen. You either push apart or you pull together. And so I think the opportunity is greater when those adversities happen to pull people together. And they do, for the most part, understand and appreciate that ability to bring them together. And it makes you feel more bonded with the people you're working with and you're fighting with every day to make everything better. So it's kind of that kind of thought process.
I agree with that. We went through a similar situation, as you know. March 2020, we had 2 remaining concerts of our season. And we made a decision, we, the board, the staff, the administrative team, that we were going to continue to pay those musicians regardless of the fact that we didn't have those concerts. And that was a really big investment for us, but we felt it was so important. And then from that point forward, we mobilized with the entire team and sat down, to your point, and decided, listen, how are we holding hands and getting through this thing? And now, as a result of it, we are so much stronger. It's really interesting how tough times will actually make you pull together.
And while you're going through them, you don't necessarily see where the end game's going to be. But, hindsight is pretty nice.
It is.
But you can kind of see that was an opportunity. It really wasn't the obstacle it looked like it was. So,
what inspires you? And what has inspired you?
So, I think my wife, we have a good relationship, so I just, love her. My dogs, because they have the base level of love. They know how, the one dog, when I come home, first thing that dog does is gets a toy and will run around the house with the toy. Without exception. I could be gone for 10 minutes or 10 days, that's what's going to happen. So, understanding that kind of thinking, that base level of, let's get real. There's some basic things, and then the pure love that they kind of show.
Unconditional.
Yeah. And then just, the people that I work with inspire, because I look for the good. So I found that the same with, everyone has friends that have good points and bad points. If you focus on their bad points, they're not going to be your friends very long. And so you focus on the good, and you're aware of the things that may not be as good, but you focus on the good, you normally can get better. But if you try to be balanced and focus on them both, you're probably going to be pretty unhappy. And that's true in life, that's true with friends, that's true with businesses.
That's true in business, it's true in everything.
Pretty much.
And that goes back to what we've been talking about all along, which is paradigm shift. If you just shift your paradigm a little bit. Do you remember the page that was in Dr. Stephen Covey's book, and it's a picture of a woman? And if you look at it in one lens,
yes.
If you look at it really quickly, it's a 90-year-old woman.
A witch almost.
A witch almost.
Yeah, and if you look at that one, it's stunning.
And it's a 19, 25-year-old beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And it's all about that paradigm shift, to your point about really looking at people that you work with, looking at people
right.
around you in your personal life, and really trying to focus in on that strength finder philosophy that we all have areas of opportunity. None of us are perfect.
And that's probably why we kind of hit it off when we first met and talked.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're looking for people, if you're like that, you're looking for people that are also looking to be that kind of positive influence. And, it's important to be associated with people that'll keep that positive energy moving forward. There's a lot of the other out there.
There sure is.
Yeah, and you got to figure out how to focus on keeping that momentum.
Well, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction.
That's
and the
right.
law of attraction in terms of surrounding yourself with people that
That's
are going
right.
to take you to higher ground. And I have experienced that there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, really, it's a foundational.
It is a
truth.
foundational thing.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
define your success by the 5 or 6 people that you have around you.
Pretty much.
And it's true.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and if you want.
And conversely, if you have 5 or 6 bad people around you, then bad things are going to happen.
That's right.
And they're going to drag you down. And conversely, if you have 5 or 6 really good people around you, then all ships raise higher.
Unfortunately, they're not teaching us this in the educational system, but these are really, really important things so our ability to help others see those things is really needed, because there's not enough of that. We don't get press on the good. You only get press on the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot
Well, that's a lot of what I like to share on Waves of Success, and a big part of why we created the podcast. And the feedback that we've received from the audience to that point is incredible. People, I think, are thirsty for some of these lessons, both in business and personal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important.
What do you do for work-life balance? I always love to ask this question, other than chasing the dogs.
It's good. Well, you know, I'm a musician, so I still play. I have a baby grand piano from, it's a Yamaha Conservatory model. I really love it. I guess like it a lot is better. But I can get into another world. Play music. I'm like, yeah, I can do that, and my whole mood will change in 10 minutes.
Do you still play guitar?
I still play guitar.
What will you play more, piano or guitar?
Piano right now, and it's changed a little bit. So I had a couple of health issues back 8 or 9 years ago, so it changes how you start looking at your free time. But that's probably a big part of it still. And then the cars, love cars. I like the people that love cars. I like hanging out with people that are into the cars. So belong to a couple of the kind of clubs, and you do a lot of those events with other people that are in the cars. So that's big. I like this Tiger thing, because we get together and do a lot of stuff outside of our meetings.
How often do you meet?
We meet once a month, typically at the Breakers Hotel.
All year, or will you take a reprieve in the summer?
No, we're all year. Now, we'll spend half our year at Breakers Hotel and the other half at Trump International Golf Club, because of the seasonal aspects of it. And it's just people are flying in. I mean, I got probably half a dozen members that literally fly in from all parts of the country.
How many people will attend the monthly meeting on average?
Tuesday of this week, we had 21 people, 17 in person, 4 of them were on Zoom. We have a very sophisticated conference system on Zoom that we use. And the energy is pretty over the top. So we meet in the morning, and we don't really leave there until somewhere. We finish at 4, but we always spend about an hour afterwards just hanging out with each other. So, and then the night before, we were at one of our members' homes in Palm Beach. He's a musician, by the way. It was really cool. And then some of the people in the audience from the group, there's like 5 or 6 of us that play, and so we got up there as well. So, and we had spouses. So it was an awesome connection type event. It's really cool.
Well, electricity, where you feed off of each other, as we've talked about.
Yeah, and you get it.
And I love that you're trying to make a difference too. I always talk about that, and I know that it's a term that's overused, but for the people that I feel really understand making a difference, there's a power in that. And whether it be one-on-one, whether it be as you have a group of the Tiger 21, and the fact that a lot of these people, to your point, are transitioning, that's a tough time.
It's
You
really
said they
hard.
lose their identity, and they probably really do. For 20 years or so, however long they had that business or that position, that was their identity.
Yeah.
And now what's next, and how do I continue to make a difference and be purpose-driven and passionate?
Yeah. You know, I see actually, because I've seen this now over a dozen times in the last couple of years, there's almost a little bit of a depression that happens to someone when they're
I've
so
seen it.
used to, doing something the same way.
When I worked at the club, there were a lot of the members that would sell their
Yeah.
businesses, highly successful.
yeah.
And for the next 3 to 9 months, they were a different
So
person.
I really focus on that. So
That's terrific.
normally I'll see it before it happens because they're part of the group. That's happening a lot of times when they join. I try to set them up in advance to make sure they're talking to someone who's already been through it. They're having that conversation so that they can get their head straight before it goes a little bit wonky on them.
So there's a mentorship throughout it.
Yeah, I mean, try to connect them with each other. Really important, not only for things like that, but then there's family dynamics that happen. Occasionally there's divorce, there's health issues, things like that. These are the issues where you really can't talk to too many people. And this is a peer group. They can be really open with each other, and we're really tight. We don't talk about anything outside of what we talk together, so that people can feel very open.
There are many sayings for people that are on top that it's lonely on top, and there's a little truth to that.
Yeah,
Because I think you get to the top, you don't feel like you have someone that you could come talk to about some of the things that scare you.
It's true. You also don't
Whether it
want
be from a business standpoint or personal standpoint.
True, and you don't want to share certain things.
No, you don't.
My cars, I can't feel comfortable driving them, except to other people that are similar.
Right.
Otherwise, you feel like you're, forget that. So I just love the cars. So you need these kind of excuses are good.
Although I would love to share with our audience some of the video of those cars because they're pretty amazing.
If you want to clip on something, they're fine.
Okay,
That'd be
good.
great.
And
Yeah.
with the music too.
I can do that too.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is very personal to me, is our location.
Right.
So this location is very personal to me. We are right now on the Jupiter Inlet. I spent
There it is.
my entire life surfing directly behind us, snorkeling at Du Bois Park, going there on field trips as a kid. When we think about work-life balance, this has to be a pretty special place for you.
This is it for me. This is my final pick. And quite honestly, I kept an eye on it. I've been in the neighborhood here since 2001, so over 20 years. And when I had seen this particular property come on the market because of where it's located, I was very excited.
Are you going to be okay with me paddling up and asking for iced tea or lemonade?
Anything you need.
Okay, good.
Because
Because I know the location now.
That's great.
Just put a doorbell on the back.
You got it. We could do that.
Anything else you'd love to share with our audience?
No, I think the only other thing is that, there's a lot of talk these days about rights. And so I was a history major, and I wanted to be a history teacher. So it's interesting because along with rights is responsibility and accountability. So they go hand in hand. They're not independent of each other. And so no one talks about the responsibilities and accountability that we have for each other. It's not just always about us. So, interesting thing to think about. There's a great YouTube video by Jordan Peterson specifically on this topic of responsibilities and rights, so that there's always that balance in everything. And this is the part that allows us to feel really good as we move forward. If we can accept the two pieces, we can be a positive influence on everybody. But if we just want one side and not willing to take what goes along with it, it becomes kind of like that positive, negative energy thing. It becomes something new. So I'm spending a little bit of time as I'm looking at my philanthropy. How do I help with the whole idea of what people are thinking about out there to understand we're responsible? And we have rights, but we have responsibilities that go along with those. And those things are what make us greater, on this planet and the things that we're doing. So, just something that recently I've been kind of working on. And then on the philanthropy side, I think trying to figure out how to get people to be involved in directing their philanthropy while they're alive. So, if there's older people that are listening to this or that are inspired by, giving, how can they make sure that they're doing that where they can actually be not just financially, but possibly even in other ways involved in the things that they want to do that will positively impact their areas. And whether it's here in Jupiter or Palm Beach or Tequesta or any of these areas, there's needs. There's needs everywhere. And it's kind of like food, closest to the ground is the best food. If we can figure out how to really help the things that are going on directly around us, and we all do that, then the world's going to be a much better place, and it's much more efficient. So there's kind of my final.
Well, and there's power in numbers.
Yes.
And what you said is very achievable.
Yes.
But it starts with one. And I want to thank you for everything that you do, both with Tiger 21,
Thanks.
for supporting the community in the many different ways that you do, and for being a great mentor to me. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I look forward for us to continue our journey.
Thank you,
and
David.
thank you for being on Waves of Success.
You got it.
Really enjoy it.
Appreciate it, David.
Yeah. Well, everybody, that wraps up today's episode of Waves of Success. I'm David McClymont. I'd like to thank our guest, George Hines, who's the chair of Tiger 21 and also the founder of George's Music. Please make sure that you follow all of our channels, subscribe, like to LinkedIn, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and until next time, make sure that you catch your wave.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Waves of Success, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IYC Yachts, Chervaux, and Square Grouper, and the production team at Indie House Films.